Thank you for attending this breakout session. This session is filled with powerful information to help improve your health and empower you. Radio Free 102.3 KJLH. We are you.
All right, ladies, thank you for joining this session. I know you guys are really enjoying yourselves with the 21st annual KJLH Women's Health Expo. Again, my name is Ade Lamar with the Steve Harvey Morning Show, and I have the honor of being a part of this session. I was just sharing with our panelists that I'm excited about this one because I've always wanted to have a good discussion when it came to physicians and people of faith, pastors, and trying to see where do we kind of what do we have in common and what are some of the things that we disagree upon? And so this is a great time to really have this conversation. We are, at the end of what we hope is a pandemic that is getting farther and farther behind us. But when we were well in the midst of it, everyone was needed. Everybody came together and pulled together to try to figure out how do we make our way through this. And so I'm so grateful to be a part of this faith-based conversation with Kaiser Permanente, Watts Healthcare Corporation, and members of the Watts Area Ministers Alliance. And we certainly appreciate you guys being a sponsor for the 21st annual KJLH Women's Health Expo. And today I would just like to really engage in a great conversation, a candid conversation with pastors and physicians. And we're naming this one Faith+Works. And it really does hit home a conversation with the pastors and physicians about when we have to deal with unthinkable decisions that we didn't really think that we would ever have to make when it came to dealing with what's happening with the pandemic. And now we're at the stage of the vaccine. And a lot of people are having the discussions at home. Should we not? Many people have different reasons as to why they are concerned and why they are, reluctant, and others are why we're headed straight down there to get it. So I would love to have this conversation. Can't wait to do it. I have a fantastic panelist with me today, and I'm going to let you meet them. First, I have Dr. Mona Shaw. Please, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Ade, for having us in KJLH and the pastors and Dr. Brooks. So happy to be here today. I'm a physician from Kaiser Permanente, South Bay. I'm a practicing internist for the last 10 years. And really, I've been working on COVID vaccines since they came out. It is my passion. My true passion is really just in education, in getting the word out and making sure that people are informed and making those correct decisions. And so I'm so happy to be here and to have this discussion today.
Thank you for being here. Dr. Oliver Brooks.
Good day to you. And thank you for having me as part of this panel and for your Women's Health Expo. I am the Chief Medical Officer at Watts Healthcare Corporation, a health center in South Los Angeles. So I look at the health and welfare in Southern LA County. I'm also the immediate past president of the National Medical Association, so that national view to ensure that we all are looking at each other as a community. And lastly, I work in the immunization realm. I'm immediate past president of the California Immunization Coalition. So COVID-19 has brought all of those things together, and I'm happy to be here to share whatever information I can.
Yes, all that has put you to work. A lot of work.
Definitely.
Dr. Shane Scott, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me today. I'm a huge fan of yours and the work that you do with KJLH. I'm the pastor of the Macedonia Baptist Church in the what I call the hamlet of Watts. We are 112 years old. I've now served there for nearly 10 years. And I'm also a survivor of COVID. And so I'm extremely happy to share. I mentioned a little earlier that we have vaccinated nearly 2,000 people over the last 45 days. And so again, thank you for having me.
Wow, thank you for the work that you're doing in our community we love that. We love that. And then we have with us Reverend Dr. James Rumpf. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to join KJLH today and the wonderful panelists that are here. I'm happy to have spent my 7.5 years of my 40-year ministry at the Grant AME Church, 104th and South Central Avenue in the Watts community, where we are part of the work of uplifting people We like that in a very diverse community where we have about 34,000 people out there. 66% are Hispanic and 19.9% are African Americans. And so it's a beautiful work. We have been a part of offering free COVID testing, and we're happy about that. We are up last week over 100 plus tests. We're so grateful for that work that's been going on a while. And, you know, we just believe that all of the ages in our neighborhood need to be addressed, and whatever their needs are, we can help. And if we hear what they're talking about, what their needs are, we can work together and help our community. That's our goal. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. Thank all of my panelists for being here. You all offer different perspectives and a different wealth of information. And I'm just happy that you guys took a little time out to talk with us, our family here. Through the pandemic, there are so many different things that we've had to deal with. And there are a lot of different, you know, folks have their theories as to where it came from and what's happening and how it's going to affect all of us. But the main thing is people are concerned and they're looking for answers, and they're looking to people that have the inside scoop, people like yourselves that, you know, can give them some kind of direction. And there's a lot of common beliefs and concerns that are in the Black and Latino communities. Some of us, of course, we've heard folks being justified in their mistrust because of other situations where we were not necessarily treated the best and misled in a lot of ways. There are concerns about the vaccine now, you know, that is out. More concern is now when you see one being pulled off for whatever reason, Johnson & Johnson. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that's going to, you know, create another form of barrier of people wondering and being more concerned. So we're concerned about the side effects, the different variants, where are they coming from, and just all of these different things. We need to make these decisions, yet still keep our faith and in knowing that, you know, God is watching over us in all of these decisions. But faith without works is dead. And we know that we have to put in that work to find out that information, to inform ourselves. And that's what this session is all about, talking to you all about that. I want to start with my pastors for just a minute. You know, COVID has shut us down. Folks are, you know, upset and scared and worried, but a lot of people have had to go back and go back to their roots and really lean on their faith when dealing with this. How have you all seen many come back to their faith, rely on their faith in this, come to you with questions? I'm sure you've seen a lot of that in the last year or so. And either one of you can come in on that one.
Well, yeah, I think that, you know, being out of corporate worship for nearly 13 months, and, you know, for us, we are slowly scaling ourselves back. We have saw people really turn back to the power of prayer, the power of community. But let me just say, Ade, that I think that COVID really exposed the cynicism of faith. You know, unfortunately, prosperity gospel did a job on the life of the church, not just Baptists, not just AME, but I think across the board. And so what we've discovered, or what I've discovered, particularly serving in a community like Watts, is that people, you know, were really distrustful of the church, distrustful of pastors. And those of us who continue to do community service, continue to be about justice and economic justice and addressing food disparities and health inequities, I believe that we are the ones who have survived. And those who, you know, prior to the pandemic, their churches only opened on Sundays. They are certainly paying the price now. as it relates to how people are responding.
I would think so, especially now that, when they shut the churches down and you couldn't come inside to worship. A lot of us had to get very creative and of course doing the virtual, and some churches not capable of virtual, but we're doing broke it all the way down to phone conference calls, letting people call in. But where there's a will, there's a way, and we were able to do it. Any of the other pastors want to comment on this, on how we've been able to fall back on our faith, or some people question faith during this time?
Well, the pandemic has reminded us that we need to utilize our faith, and then we need to put it to work. I think this is a wonderful session, Faith+Works, because if there is faith, if we do believe in God, then we must demonstrate what God looks like in the worst adversities. God is at his best when things seem their worst. And so here at our church, we've been really trying to get involved, to keep the people connected through these platforms of technology, to worship through these mediums on Sunday, and during the week carry out ministry, to expose the people to what's going on in the communities around them and how they can participate in the life of the community and carry out their faith work in the church. We've been able to work with young people and connect with other organizations in the community. This, I think, is important. We are more than just a Sunday morning enterprise. Our work is a business, but the business is saving souls, but saving the souls from the adversities of everyday life. And so we're excited about where we stand and the opportunity of COVID to do our work in a more direct manner.
When we think about dealing with something like a pandemic, we know that a lot of times we reach out to our pastors for spiritual guidance and things of that nature. But there are a lot of us go to our physicians as well. We talk to you. We want to know what's happening. We want to talk to you and get reassurance as well. How many of your patients are coming to you, doctors, not just for information about the vaccine and what's happening next, but just to talk with you, to kind of vent to you guys a little bit? You guys are having to kind of blur the lines a little bit with science and faith as well, in some cases, I've heard.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And thank you again, Dave, for having this. So, you have to make a way out of no way. And so times are hard and people lean on their faith in times of trouble, as Reverend Rump said. So it's been not even so much patients as it's been family, friends, neighbors, business associates. They come to us and they ask, what do you think? What's going on with this? And what I have learned, and that's why this is such a good panel, is that it is not all about science. I can show someone facts and figures, graphs and data, and they still won't get vaccinated. I can say to someone would just say, you need to get vaccinated. No facts, no data, nothing, and they get vaccinated. So what I have had to learn to do, which I actually say I've had experience with, because this is not the first time we've faced vaccine hesitancy, which is the real issue. There's vaccine hesitancy about influenza vaccine, and measles vaccine, and other vaccines. You have to blend science with, I call it psychology, and give people what they need to, in my mind, also gonna need them to get vaccinated. So your job as a physician is to heal. And there are many ways to heal. And you have to use all the strategies that you know of to get them to that place. So yeah, I've had calls, emails, visits about what the testing, vaccinating, the disease itself, my family, and so it's been a real challenge. But that's what we are trained to do.
Dr. Shaw, I'm sure in communities, when they know that you're a doctor and that you're so intensely involved in the vaccine process, you're getting the calls too. I'm sure there folks want the reassurance. They want to know what's happening, want the inside scoop from you as well, right?
Yeah, so like Dr. Brooks was saying, I think it's really the art of medicine. I think, as physicians, we know the technicalities, we know the science. How do we portray that? How do we make that available to everyone to be able to access in a way that's not threatening, that they're able to understand, where they don't feel pressured or forced either? I think a lot of the, especially with vaccinations in particular, people want to have that freedom. People want to be able to have that choice. And our job is really just to kind of give them that voice, give them the education, give them the background, and really listen to their needs. The pandemic has, just ruined lives across the board. As a primary care physician, the majority of my visits entail some form of mental health, you know, problem. There's a lot of anxiety,
Yes.
a lot of depression, sometimes subclinical, meaning it's not full on, but just a lot of mood disturbances. And people have just gone through a lot financially, emotionally, with the loss of loved ones, and just really being there to support them and go through that process. And then, yes, bringing the science back into it, but really based on what they've gone through.
When everything happened, so much has happened in the last year on top of the pandemic. We've had the situation with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all of this that's happened. We don't have enough time for me to give you my full perspective on why all of this had to happen for us to get to certain things to happen. So I won't go into that. But people were still so engaged in what was happening in our world that even though we were in a pandemic, they were out protesting. And some of us were out there with masks, some of us weren't. And as a physician, I know you were cringing, thinking, oh my God, the spread, this is going to be a big, big issue. And then as a pastor, you're thinking, oh my gosh, you like to see that everyone be participating, but you also see the hazard as well. How were you able to, in each of your prospective positions, be able to kind of deal with COVID when all of that was happening? How were you able to, if you were able to at all?
Well, me from a physician standpoint, I remember, that's funny you bring that up, when people were out there protesting Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Many without a mask. This is like May, June, when we were just understanding. It took courage. And one part of me said, don't do it. Here's the advice I was giving. The people that were young are a little less likely to die from COVID. I said, wear a mask, God, but this is a moment. If we did not grab that moment, this guy Chauvin would have been found not guilty. It was necessary, and we were saving lives. So it's all about, as a doctor, saving lives, keeping people healthy. I was saying to people who may be at my generation, if you want to support Black Lives Matter, write a check, do emails, have symposium virtually, do things that don't put you, there are ways to be active, to be an advocate without putting your life at risk.
Yeah.
But it was really, that was probably one of the single most challenging times. It was those weeks. Now, it's interesting you brought that up because I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
Oh my goodness. I was torn because I realized it was necessary, because a chain of events had to happen to bring us to more, for the world to see bigger, for you to have the world's attention. Right. But at the same time, we're going through a pandemic. So what do you do? So Pastor Brooks, Dr. Brooks, what did you think when you were seeing it? I'm talking with Pastor Scott. When you were seeing that? What did you think?
Well, listen, I think that, Dr. King said that protest is the language of the unheard. Mm-hmm. I was rooting for the protesters, was a part of the protest. So first of all, let me just say that I am thankful that the protesters decided not to come to South LA. And I also celebrate, and you can quote me on this, that the protesters hit the economics of communities all over this country, because it was hitting the economics that really got the attention of powers at be. Now, whether protesters should have destroyed stuff or not destroyed stuff, I'll leave that to individual consciences. Nevertheless, I'm grateful that they didn't come to South LA, and I'm grateful that they went to other parts of the city and that they got attention. I think that I don't know how I felt about it happening in the middle of a pandemic. We dealt with 4 years of an incompetent, nasty, evil president who was very intentional about mixed messaging. And so we really didn't know the depth of this virus. We heard that it was dangerous, but there were so many mixed messages. And I think that leadership matters, and we did not get leadership from the president, and therefore Dr. Fauci and some others, their hands were tied. And so the protest took precedent over health and wellness. And that's just kind of where we found ourselves. We found ourselves dealing with culture over Christ. And as a result, people made the best decision that they could make.
Dr. Shaw, when you were seeing that happening, were you cringing? Were you trying to figure out how do I jump into this and let people know that they do have to protect themselves? What were your thoughts when you saw those things happening?
So I'll admit I was one of those protesters. I did
You
go
have a
out
mask on up there, Doctor.
with a mask. I took my kids. Actually, a group of us physicians went out. And so it wasn't just myself to really be there in support. And so, it's just one of those times where it's not black and white, right? Like, yes, we are in a pandemic. That isn't the only crisis that was there, though. There were other crises happening simultaneously, and we can't ignore that either. So yes, absolutely 100%. We need to be safe, or as safe as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. But there are, it's always about a risk benefit analysis, like what are the risks of me going out there and what are the benefits of me going out there? And what am I going to do for my community? What am I going to do to show support? What am I going to do even for my Black colleagues? I really went in support of them. So it was just a matter of, I don't know if there was a right decision, but I think everyone who was there made the right decision for themselves. And as long as they were trying to be safe and trying to mask up, that's all we could hope for.
Yeah. Reverend Rumpf, what did you think? People are torn. Do I go? Do I put on how do I do? What were you thinking and how were you advising when they came to you?
Well, I think people have to respond to what's going on around them. When it's bad for them in their neighborhood, they've got to get out there and invest themselves in change. They got to do something about making the change happen they want to happen. So when we are dropping off food, if we can't stand in line, we're carrying water out. When we are being safe as we can be, we're doing something there. Not everyone can get into protest, but when people hurt, the voice of that pain is protest on the larger scale. And so to see it was kind of salvific for me. It's saving grace, so to speak, to know that we have the boldness, the strength to get up and say, we don't like what's going on, and we're here to demand a change. This is how change happens. Someone has to say what others are thinking, but don't have the strength to say it. That's why the pulpit is so important on Sunday mornings, because we realize that our people have it within them. They have the potential to do, and we just there to say, hey, God wants to help you do it. Come on, get up. And the protest of the street is the voice of the people who are in pain. The pandemic just pulled us together, and they couldn't miss us because we were in front of everybody on every screen. Thank God.
Boy, I tell you, you're going to make me, Reverend, you're going to make me tell you my theory here, because I'm telling you, we all think, everyone was talking about how poor leadership we had with, Trump in office, but it had to happen that way. We had to have a Trump. We had to have a pandemic. We had to have a George Floyd, unfortunate. It had to happen in that way. That was the pandemic was the only thing that could shut the world down. I mean, just shut it down, where we had everyone's attention to say, look at what's happening to our people, and for us all to come together. I mean, to have protests all around the country. That's another topic. Let me stop. I'm going to go too far out.
And
Let's
today,
talk.
listen, I think you're right. I think that, it pushed us to a place of responding. It
Yes.
pushed us to a place of necessary confrontation. I said just a couple days ago, I called some folk together in support of Congresswoman Waters, and she was absolutely right. We have a responsibility and a necessary priority to stay in the face of the oppressor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even in the midst of a pandemic, James says that faith without works is dead. Jesus was so angry that he goes into the temple, turns the table upside down, pulls out a whip, and drives the money changers out. And our responsibility, black, white, purple, red, is to stand up in the face of injustices and scream, hell no, we won't take it anymore.
And let me tell you, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, she is yelling the loudest. That's our girl. We don't play when it comes to her. Back away from Congresswoman Waters.
That's my member.
We love her. We love her. We have major love for her. She is such family. Okay, so let's talk about this vaccine, because I'm sure you guys are hearing all the different things. People are coming in asking, what is the majority of things you're hearing about the vaccine? As far as what are you hearing, Reverend Rumpf, what are you hearing when people are asking you about the vaccine?
Well, I started my collegiate career at Tuskegee Institute, the Tuskegee Institute, now Tuskegee University, and one of the first stories you hear is about bad blood.
Yeah.
Where those people were left to war against infection that was life-threatening. They didn't know exactly what it was, and so I just brought that up to talk about the reality that our people know about many instances, many where they were given things that were adverse to them, that was not good for them. So they had to live through finding confidence in knowing that God does intercede in meeting our need, even when we need to trust where we haven't been able to trust in a while. And so we've got to trust that God is working in the medical community to help us with the miracle of medicine, which I think is a miracle. And I'm just so proud that, and I'm humble, in tears in my soul about the innumerable people who went out on the front line to do different things. And I heard them talk about friends who are in the profession who had to undress in their garages, go to their showers, and wash up because they didn't want to infect their home. Successfully, God shielded many of those frontline people. Now, this is exciting to me, so I'll try not to overspend my time. But do you know that we saw the best of America?
Yes.
In many instances, we had no conscience of our color. The biggest problem in America is the race line problem, and it's been there for centuries. But you know what? And the people are not afraid to get out there when they believe they got to go. They have to go. I'm thinking about the woman who jumped in the river, in the water, when her kids were drowning and she couldn't swim. If you have a pandemic, you can't stay in the house and die. You got to get food. So you go out and get food. You go out to the hospital and give medical care. Our people understood it and they got vaccinated. Many of my people got vaccinated before I did. What a wonderful group of people, how encouraging the church can be. I'll stop there, but we were helping to get vaccine 2 Watts. And I'm so proud that Dr. Scott was able to do that. His church, as well as the other church who participated in the Watts area, ministers there in Watts.
Well, I tell you, it is still a big collection of people coming together. I hear so many churches and organizations, they're doing it. You got it at the mall and different places. But folks are still asking, what is the vaccine? Dr. Shaw, would you like to address that? Like, what is the vaccine? Folks are, one of the biggest things I heard was, oh, I don't want them to put the virus in me, and so what exactly is it? And some of the side effects that come along with it, and what can people expect from it?
Sure. So there are two types of vaccines right now out there. The mRNA vaccines are going to be the ones that were out first, the Pfizer and the Moderna. I think that most people are really familiar with or have heard of at least. And pretty much, yes, you're absolutely right. We are not giving you the virus in any of these vaccines. I think that's the number one thing to know. And it's really just saying, like, here's some instructions. It's literally an IKEA instruction manual. That's how I think about it. And here's some instructions on how to make a protein. If you guys have seen a picture of a coronavirus, it's that little ball with it has a lot of spikes on it. So
Yes.
that spike is a really nice identifying factor for the coronavirus. And so we just tell your body, these are the instructions on how to make that spike, not the whole virus, not all the stuff inside, just that one little spike. And then your body, then once it gets injected into your arm, it translates those instructions, it opens those instructions, it reads it, and pretty much builds one of those pieces of that spike protein. And then your body recognizes it as a foreign object. This is a bad guy. Who is this, right? And then your immune system goes to work for you and builds an army. That's how I really like to think about it. And as soon as that as soon as that mRNA vaccine goes in you, as soon as the instructions are read, it pretty much self-destructs. It's not lasting, it's not staying, it's not going into your DNA. Again, the real virus is not going into you. It's literally just giving your body the ability to recognize the bad guy, mount a response to it. So if it sees the bad guy again in the future, it already has that army ready to go to fight for you.
Wow. So I love it when we get folks that can break it down to us and we can really kind of understand it. Dr. Brooks, I'm hearing so much, we're getting facts that California is now the lowest in the country with cases. That's good news. More and more folks are getting vaccines, but I did a story today that said that we're 50% of us are not from California are not going to get the second dose. So there are certain barriers. So we hear about people that the CDC is now saying we can take our mask off when we're outdoors. And a lot of folks are relying on that herd immunity. Is that what it is?
That's correct.
Explain that a little bit to us and the different barriers that we're having?
So let's look at herd immunity. I'm starting to call it, I just heard someone state this to me 2 days ago, call it community immunity, because herd immunity sounds like you're getting all the cows vaccinated. So essentially, and it's really important to understand that, let's say that you went to a Lakers game and only 10% of the people were vaccinated and you had COVID. You could spread it to 90% of the people sitting in your section. And then those people that got it, let's say 75% of them got it, they can spread it to 90% of the people they're around. So that just grows just like this, out and out. Now let's look at the other. 90% of the people at that Laker game are vaccinated and you have COVID. There's only one person in that section that you could give it to. You may not be able to give it to. They may be sitting 10 feet away instead of next to you. If they get it, perchance, there's only one person that they're around that can get it. So what happens is the virus stops circulating. And so it's there, maybe 1 in every 200 people have it and get sick, or 2,000 people, but not like we have right now. 10% of this country have had COVID. 32 million people have had COVID. So we will, a year from now, if we have community immunity, it'll be 100th of what that is. Now, the barriers, I've been thinking more about the positive side. So you're speaking to the barriers, but the LA Times had a headline on Tuesday that said, vaccination equals liberty. So if you are vaccinated, you can do almost anything outside. The only thing you can't do is go to a large gathering of a lot of people, but you can go outside without a mask, without social distancing, and do almost anything. You can be indoors with other unvaccinated people without any infection control. No masking, no social distancing. I still wash my hands. And then if you're vaccinated, you can go into one family household where low risk people are unvaccinated. So if you have a daughter and your daughter has grandkids and the daughter is at not high risk and the children don't have asthma or some high risk, even if she said, I'm not getting vaccinated and the kids are too young, you can still go and be around them. So there are many things you can do. If you travel and come back, you don't have to get tested. But the caveats that I give, and probably the most important, is if you get symptoms, fever, shortness of breath, sore throat, nausea, vomiting, 14 symptoms, those are the main ones, you still need to be tested. So I don't want people to get complacent about that, number one. And number two, importantly, the data is just now coming in of whether or not if you're vaccinated, you can still spread it. People think since I'm vaccinated, I can't give it to other people. No, it's that we're loosening things up because if everyone's vaccinated, they can't catch it from you. But you can still spread it as far as we know. That's really, now the data's coming out and we'll know more about this. This is, like ask me tomorrow and I'll have more information. That's the way it's been the whole time with this pandemic, day to day. But people remember, if you're vaccinated, you still can spread it. But if you're vaccinated, you can do a whole lot of things that unvaccinated people can't do. And the biggest thing is you can feel free.
Well, I love folks telling me about, oh, I'm vaccinated, but I think sometimes we are not getting the message that what full vaccination
Oh,
means.
excuse me, you mentioned that. So I wanted to get to that. All of these criteria are with fully. So underline that, bold it and italicize it.
Right.
Because all the
And
guidelines,
full
and they do
vaccination
that.
is 2 weeks after that second shot.
2 weeks and second shot. And it's important. And for us in science, studies were done on getting 2 shots for Pfizer and Moderna, one with J&J. So don't tell me you got one, so you are vaccinated, but you're not fully vaccinated. We don't even know what that means in terms of how long the immunity lasts, how high it is, whether you're protected against variants, whether you're going to spread it. I don't know. We're not even studying that. You need to get your second shot. Don't even come talk to me until after you've gotten your second shot.
I love it.
One of the reasons why that J&J vaccine is kind of nice for people who are needle phobic, for people who just, say, I'm going to do this once and that's, you got me, you can't get me twice. Go on and get the J&J vaccine.
I really thought a lot about the Johnson & Johnson. At first I was like, oh, well, it must be so strong, whatever, but it really did play a big part in getting our homeless vaccinated. Because sometimes you're finding our homeless to get them to come back to do a second shot, it's sometimes going to be far more difficult and challenging. So I know it really was going to help in our homeless community, getting that one shot. If we can just get that one shot in them, Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, that's correct. And also the migrant community, let's say farm workers. You don't know where they're going to be. Some even cross the border and then go back.
Right.
So there are populations, jails, for example. The average time you're in jail is 3 days. So if you get it while you're in jail, somehow you got to get the second one and you may never get it. So that's why, I want to say what Dr. Rump said. This is a miracle. And he said God made a miracle. I think that people need to understand that aren't getting vaccinated, this was laid in front of you. There could not be a vaccine. And all we'd be doing now is counting more bodies. So we need to truly understand what he said. And the role of the ministers is so important because they can say things they're trained to speak in a manner in which it reaches the heart. I'm trained to speak the brain, but I work on the heart too. But when those gentlemen and ladies that are of the faith, when they get out there and express it, when they get the knowledge, which sounds like both of these gentlemen have, they can frame the message in a manner in which no one else can, because that is their calling.
And Dr. Brooks, Ade, I think you're right. And thank you for helping to bring credibility to the faith community by endorsing clergy. But listen, one of the major hiccups in this pandemic, and as it relates to vaccination, was that there was no real investment in education. If you drive through underserved communities, there are cannabis billboards, there are alcohol billboards, there are Amazon Prime
Yes.
billboards, Netflix billboards, but there were no educational billboards as it relates to the vaccine. And then Bishop Ulmer did a great job by bringing clergy together to lobby the governor to utilize churches as vaccination sites.
Mhm.
Now, it was late. It was late in the game. Some of us were already in conversation with FEMA. But, you know, listen, Dodger Stadium was a great place. The Forum was a great place. But if you drive in communities in South Central LA, there's a church on every corner, right? And for example, where Macedonia is, folk from Imperial Courts or Jordan Downs or the Nickerson Garden, we're neutral. But there are people who won't cross gang territories. And so church parking lots were very important.
Yeah.
And I said to the governor and to his people is that the governor needs to stick to politics, and he needs a Dr. Fauci in California who can deal with executing a strategy for the pandemic. But we lacked education. And so a lot of folk were like, well, I don't really know what this vaccination is. And let me mention again that folk were not necessarily distrustful of the vaccination. They were distrustful of Donald Trump, who was pushing the vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the pandemic first hit, the conversation was, well, it's going to take a year to get a vaccination out. Vaccination came out in 6 months. Well, that raised eyebrows. So education was important and still is important as we seek to continue to get in front of this thing, because another pandemic is coming.
Well, I think you're right in just about everything you said there, if not everything, because we have to prepare for the next situation to come. And when we don't know and we're not educated about the vaccine, then the unknown is always fearful. And when we saw other ethnicities flocking to get it, it's because we didn't know. We weren't sure, we didn't know. Also to you, Dr. Scott, explain to us, a lot of people, I heard people saying it was against their faith to get a vaccine, or maybe there was a reason why they couldn't do it. Is there a reason why in our faiths that many think, or there's a denomination that prohibits people from getting vaccinated?
Well, listen, there are faiths that, you know, just like contraceptives, there are faiths that will encourage their followers, you know, not to get vaccines, right? We just happen to be not one of them. And let me just say, might I add, when you have the virus,
because you've actually dealt with it.
Listen,
a survivor here. Let's listen.
I said you can give it to me 3 or 4 times if that's what you want to do, because it's serious. And I did everything I could to protect myself, and still got it. And hopefully we have a conversation about inequities in healthcare, because I think that is important to discuss, inequities. But let me go back and say that faith leaders who encourage people not to get the vaccine, in my opinion, are malpracticing. It's like a doctor who takes an oath to treat people. And that doctor says, don't take what will help you. They are charged with medical malpractice. And faith leaders are, in my opinion, being, you know, faith malpractice. Don't encourage people not to take the vaccine. But more than that, I'm hearing pastors encourage people to take the vaccine who are not encouraging people to eat right and to exercise and to take care of their bodies. Because
he's like,
pre-existing health conditions, you know, adversely affect your body in ways that healthy people who get COVID are not affected, right?
Dr. Brooks, you're preaching here, because I'm telling you, when we first, started seeing things, and I saw our people out and about, and throwing birthday parties in the middle of the street for 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds, I was so distraught. The next day, I just had to talk about it, because we are the very ones when they were talking about the pre-existing conditions. We're plagued with the different things, the diabetes, the heart conditions, and all these different things. And when I was trying to tell my people that, they were saying to me, "You're being brainwashed. They want you to think that's what," and so you got all these different people trying to tell you. It's like you're screaming, like, please stop and listen. And then I kept telling them, like, you get it, and you go to the hospital, wherever in your community, and you think you're going to have a ventilator there waiting with your name on it, and it's not like that. And that's when you go into talking about healthcare and equity. We didn't have the kind of resources that a lot of communities have, and so we suffered and we died.
So there are 3 things that put us at higher risk, African Americans, and probably Latinos too, quite frankly. Social determinants of health. We had lousy jobs, we were out there, we were working, we were poor. Underlying conditions, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, put you at risk, and have them all, and you're about 10 times at risk. And then racism, which is kind of what we're speaking to. You go to the hospital, okay, there are 2 ventilators, a Black man and a white man, who's going to get the ventilator? Okay, because remember, we had a shortage of ventilators. So at the end of May, we actually worked with Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, said we wanted all these decisions to be overseen by higher order bodies to determine who got ventilators, look at who died, and do a root cause analysis, make sure there were no inequities. But you're right, I was cringing also. And again, I get back to the basic concept. This is, this vaccine helps. I mean, you get all this stuff you're talking about. We were at highest risk for death, and we're still the lowest in terms of getting vaccinated. So there still is inequity, and some of that is on us, but a lot of this is the fact that we had 3 pandemics. We had the biologic pandemic of COVID, we had the economic pandemic where people still are recovering, and then we had the social pandemic of underlying racism, which has always been there, but somehow a lot of the majority community are just, oh, really? It's been like that forever? So, with all those things coming out at the same time, we as communities need to understand things that you said. We can't be out there having parties. They're not brainwashing us. Look objectively. Talk to people like Reverend Scott, Reverend Rumpf. You listen to what KJLH is putting out and get the information. So if you felt that way, I'm assuming that you did something about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They had me telling them that, Reverend Rumpf, what were you able to do when you would see these things? How were you able to kind of encourage people not only to pay attention to what's happening around them, but to get them into getting the vaccine? Are you able to encourage folks to do that and put down their concerns, Reverend Rumpf?
Yeah. Yes, I think people need to just be reminded of the realities. One of the things that's unsettling for me is the thought, if you have to do everything you can to be safe for yourself and for others. And, some people were recovering from having contracted COVID, but many people were not. You just have to encourage people to invest where the best benefits are. And the best benefits were with medicine. But I think I want to echo what Pastor Shane Scott has said, and what I hear Dr. Brooks saying about getting the vaccine. It's a miracle, and people miss the education piece. In my community, in the African American community, the pastors were missed. We were out there fighting just to be listed as essential businesses. By that time, the path to the vaccine was well on the way. We were trying to get help with funds to keep our doors going. And it was God that did that more than anything. The people said, we're not going to leave our faith. And that's because we were able to get in touch with them on the phone, on Zoom, on Facebook. And they began to believe what we were saying. The church in our community is a staple for leadership. You cannot pass the Black clergy. I don't know how white clergy do it. I've never been a member of a church, but I'm just saying in the Black community, the Black clergy must be the voice to the people and transmit what the people need to do. We need to hear from the community. That's why we're out there going to these meetings, not because we have nothing else to do, but we have to hear what the medical community is saying and others so that we become the informant to our congregations. So when we started to talk about the vaccine, we saw a loosening in our congregation in terms of being willing to get the vaccine. Now, they're in better condition, as it appears to us, with the vaccine than without it. They have less of a chance of contracting COVID. And maybe more importantly, less of a chance than spreading it. Going out and being safe yourself is good, but what about the people at home when you return? What about their safety? So what we can do to keep everyone around us safe. And I think our people are receiving that now more than ever.
Now, a day before you move, let me say something.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go deep and wide just for a moment.
All right, Pastor Scott, let's hear what you got.
Dr. Shaw, Dr. Brooks are necessary commodities in our communities. We need doctors. A doctor saved my life. But let me just say that doctors and nurses need preachers, right? Look, how shall they hear, says Paul, without a preacher? And how shall they be saved unless he preaches? The gospel or faith, because I'm a Christological preacher. But let me just say that if Buddha is your route, if Muhammad is your route, that's fine. But the wisdom of the preacher is necessary as much as the wisdom of the doctor is necessary. And particularly because Dr. Rumpf and I serve in Watts, I've heard people all over this city say to me, Shane Scott, I like you. I like your message. I like your advocacy, but we ain't coming to Watts. These are professional people. These are doctors who would prefer to go to the golf course on Sunday morning than to come to church. And after this pandemic, I want to suggest that my brothers and sisters who are health professionals, if you're not coming to church for the gospel, at least come to church because your patients are in church. And your patients can use some encouragement by seeing you in church. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I appreciate all that, but I love that we all had to come together and rely on each other. We all had to. Everybody had to, whatever your expertise was, however you could reach, whoever you could reach, it had to all come together. And right now, Dr. Shaw, I'm gonna have to really rely on you a little bit, because I saw this study. It said that it was by NetBase, and they were saying there were 5 key things driving the social media conversation around the vaccine confidence. And they were saying 1 was personal freedom. People didn't want to feel like they were forced to take the vaccine. The second was safety and efficacy. Third, lack of motivation. 4th, conspiracy theories, which we talked about, and misinformation. And then they were comparing it to the flu vaccine, which, folks are on the fence about the flu vaccine. I've heard so many people say, first time I ever caught the flu, I took the flu vaccine, so, how can you address some of the concerns raised by your patients and as well as those of the pastors?
Yeah, so, as far as the personal freedom, and thank you Pastor Scott for bringing up I think COVID has, the COVID pandemic is one thing, but there's just so many other issues that it has unrooted. Like you said, all the pre-existing conditions, there's a reason why certain communities are higher risk for contracting COVID and dying from COVID, and just really addressing those things. And so I think education is really, really the best and only answer here. And whether it comes through a minister or a pastor or a doctor, it really has to come from all of us in all the communities. And so, talking about personal freedom, it's really just about making the right decision for you and your family and giving people the facts to know that they're making that right decision, right? And you're absolutely right. We don't want people to feel that it's forced, because again, with all of the history with medicine, especially in communities of people of color, I completely understand the distrust that is out there. And it's, we have to do the work to repair that. And moving forward, because this is not the last time this is going to happen. We will have, whether it's a pandemic or not, there's always going to be something, and we have to stay on top of that. As far as the just the safety and the efficacy, one thing that I tell my patients is, a lot of people were worried that, okay, well, yeah, like someone had mentioned, oh, the vaccine came out in 6 months, and it was under an administration that a lot of people did not, have faith in or have trust for. In reality, I think this is where faith and science come together. They're not mutually exclusive. You have to, or we have to trust the scientists and the doctors and the public health experts out there that do this for a living, because we want to do good and we want to really help people, and we are not under influence of politicians and others, or companies even. And that these vaccines have really, the mRNA technology that made Pfizer and Moderna, for example, already been used in other cancer therapies that are already out. Some of this research for this specific vaccine actually started way back in 2002 with the first SARS virus, and then again with what's called the MERS virus. They were already doing preclinical vaccine research at that time. Luckily, those viruses just kind of faded away, and when things fade away, funding goes away, and it just kind of got stuck there. But the thing is, the work was already there, so it is not brand new. I always like to tell people that these technologies and the will of the people that are making these things is not new, and we really just need to trust the science there, in knowing that it is safe, that it is effective.
Why was the Johnson & Johnson removed, Dr. Shaw? Because, just when I thought like we were getting some good headway and telling people about vaccines, and people were making up their minds whether they were going to do it, then this happened with Johnson & Johnson. Then it felt like we were starting completely over, because they were like, see. What happened with Johnson & Johnson? I know they're putting it back in the mix now, but all it takes is just one little hiccup and it can really ruin the faith of folks in it. So what happened? Why should we now be okay? What's going on?
So if anything, I want to put a positive spin on this and actually say that this is why we should have faith in science, because we were able to really easily capture these cases really early on and put a pause on it to learn more, to investigate more, to make sure that it continues to be safe. We have something called a vaccine adverse events reporting system, which can be reported both by patients or by healthcare providers. And if there are any side effects that we think are related to the vaccine, we are to report those. And so pretty much the Johnson & Johnson vaccine came out in early March. By that second week, pretty much they were observing a few of these cases. And really within 3.5 weeks is when they saw 6 of these cases of these rare blood clots occur. And rather than continuing with it and saying, okay, well, we'll just kind of push this to the side, not let the public know, they said, okay, there's something going on. Let's pause, let's investigate, let's make sure that it truly is safe. So, we are still learning. We're not going to lie and say that we know everything. But at the same time, I think the pause was done appropriately. it unfortunately does breed more misinformation, more conspiracy theories, and things like that. But I really hope that, the confidence in vaccines can go back up. The pause was lifted because overall, your chances of getting COVID and having a complication from COVID, blood clots in particular, 30 times higher if you get COVID compared to if you receive the vaccine. So, it's always about, again, weighing those risks and the benefits and making sure that what we're doing is truly good for everyone.
Dr.
Maybe a
Brooks.
quick comment there.
Yeah,
Also
Dr.
on
Oh,
that.
yeah, good. Yeah.
First of all, what we saw was somewhere between 6 and 13 cases of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, so blood clots at the base of the brain. They were happening at about 2 to 3 times what you would expect. And these things happen, but they were happening more frequently. So key to what Dr. Shaw says, we picked it up within 3 weeks. Suppose we pick this up 3 months from now. That'd be a problem.
Mhm.
So then it was 1 per million, maybe 2 per million people. They're all women between 18 and 48. Yeah. I actually sat on the committee that reviews this information, the ACIP COVID-19 work group that feeds information into the CDC. So I saw all the information, and I cannot divulge that, what I saw. But that being stated, I think that the CDC made a decision. They put a pause in.
Mhm.
They looked at all the data, met with J&J, and they said, okay, we'll let people know it's out there. So now if you get the J&J vaccine, you're clearly aware of what's going on. I had a woman who was between 18 and 48 come to me this week and say, I've been hesitant about getting the vaccine, but I think I'm going to get that J&J vaccine because there's only one shot. And now my family's vaccinated and I'm the only one. And I'm seeing that peer pressure, which one thing is going to get people to get things done, get vaccinated. And she's going to get the J&J. Because the chances of her getting a blood clot are maybe 1 in 500,000 to 1 in a million versus getting COVID-19 and having a 1% chance of hospitalization, 1% chance of death. So, I think that it happened the way it was supposed to happen.
Dr. Brooks, tell me about the variants, because folks are, we're traveling more, people are, coming back into the States. We're talking about the variants, different ones. Explain to us what they are and if we are protected or not.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to Dr. Shaw's analogy. Just think of those pictures you've been seeing of this ball, the coronavirus with the little red spikes. So let's say instead of the spike being red, it's burgundy. And then instead of it being burgundy, it could be yellow. That's a major shift. Or instead of red, it could be auburn. So the question is, does the antibody that attaches, so there's the spike and antibody sits on it, let's say it just blocks it, can't do anything with this thing sitting on top of it. Will these antibodies and other immune function assays block the variants? Right now, what we're finding is more or less, yes. If you're vaccinated, you seem to have protection against some of these variants, especially for the J&J vaccine was developed with 40% of those being in South Africa. And that's one of the main variants is the UK, the Brazilian, the South African, and then there are 2 Californian. So,
I know
our own variants. So the bottom line is this, and this is really important. Doesn't make any difference. My point is this: get vaccinated, follow the guidelines. So even right now, we feel that the vaccines have some efficacy against them. The treatments have some efficacy against the vaccine, the variants. But bottom line, get vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, you can be indoors with other vaccinated people. Excuse me. You can be outdoors doing almost anything. So variants be darned. Let us come to me, like you just did, ask us. But for in your real life, the bottom line is get vaccinated, follow CDC guidelines.
Okay, guys, I could talk to you guys all day. I could sit and we could talk this all day because I think our ladies need to hear from you. I want to give you each a chance to leave our audience, our ladies, with something. And I will start in the position there with Dr. Shaw. I will start with you.
Oh gosh, I think we're all here for the same purpose, regardless of, backgrounds, regardless of religion. It's just, we're really here. The COVID pandemic, I think, really brought together communities, right? And we're here to fight this virus. We need to outsmart it. And we have the miracle of medicine. We have the miracle of science here to help us. And, vaccinating ourselves is just, it's vaccinating it's protecting our families, it's protecting our neighbors, it's protecting our coworkers. we do so much more than just protecting ourselves. You know, I can't tell you how many patients I have had where they might have gotten COVID, they had mild disease, no big deal. They gave it to their parents, they gave it to their cousins, they ended up losing them. It is not something that you want. And lastly, COVID doesn't only result in death, it does lead to chronic symptoms. You know, Pastor Scott, I'm hopeful that you don't have those what we call long hauler symptoms, but people who recover from COVID don't fully recover. It's not just you either die or you don't. If you can have shortness of breath and headaches and persistent fatigue and brain fog and these are young, healthy people that were very active that are now completely debilitated by this. And we, you know, as healers are completely helpless in the situation. And so the only way to really stop this is to try and you know, accept what we have you know, been given as a miracle here with the vaccines, and to get vaccinated and get your family vaccinated.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brooks.
So 2 points that I will touch on: community and faith. First of all, in terms of community, there are 2 reasons to get vaccinated: to protect yourself or protect the community. America is a country of rugged individualism, but that really isn't our America. Our America is a collective community because we've had to come together to fight to get to where we are. I will say that women, as a man, I have to admit it, women run the show, okay? I'm a pediatrician, so I see mothers coming in. They run the family. I'm a husband. My wife tends to run the show. And then I'm a son. So, you know, Nadine Burke-Harris is our Surgeon General. So they were saying, let the doctor lead, not Gavin Newsom. She has been leading. She's been doing an excellent job. So as women, the other grandmothers, okay, so the heart and soul of the Black community are grandmothers. So you women, you are the backbone of the society, of the Black society. And let's say in California, Los Angeles County, you all are the leaders. You do what you feel you need to do to take care of our community. Look at it from that perspective. And then faith. We can only go so far as doctors, as healthcare providers. There is a whole level above us, and that's faith. And so when we work symbiotically, when we work together, community and faith, they match. That is how we will get to the other side. And lastly, the only way to the other side of this pandemic is through the vaccine, period. So I just speak to all you women. I appreciate the work you do in the community. I understand your role, and be advised that we're dependent on you to take us through this.
Thank you. Pastor Scott.
Listen, I would say to our sisters out there, continue to be champions for justice, fight the inequities, speak truth to power, love Black men and men, that we might be better for our communities. We can get in front of this pandemic.
Thank you so much. And Reverend Dr. James Rumpf, we leave you the final word, sir. I need you to mute yourself there. There we go. There you go.
Thank you so much. This is an absolutely incredible panel. KJLH, you've done it again. Today, you have put it together, and we've heard these voices that are absolutely encouraging to me from the church, Pastor Scott, Dr. Brooks, who has that motivating urge toward medicine. And when Dr. Shaw was talking about that coronavirus, that little thing, I've seen so many pictures of that, and it looks spooky. I mean, Steven Spielberg kind of spoke spooky, man. And I'm like, how does the vaccine work if it's going to be injected into my body? I don't want it. Dr. Scott talked about having it. And to see him having overcome it without symptoms, and he is running a vaccine site at his church, it's encouraging as a pastor. But I tell you, Dr. Shaw, when you talked about how the vaccine enters the body, and how it in no way is put there to damage the body. I think that is something I could say to my congregation. And if they, when they see this show aired, they're going to say, you know what? It's probably best for me to have the vaccination than to not have it. I'm for getting vaccinated. Thank you, medical community. Thank you, church. Thank you, KJLH. We thank you for what you're doing. God bless us. God bless America.
Thank you. Thank you all. You have been so wonderful. We just appreciate the support that we get with KJLH. You guys, we couldn't do what we do without you. And you guys are in the trenches. We are just, beating the drum and getting the word out. But you guys are in the trenches doing the real work. We thank Kaiser Permanente for sponsoring, being a part of it. 21 years we've been doing this. And if God's will, we'll be back with more information. And you guys will join us then as next time, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ladies,
Thank
we
you.
hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you can rewind it and check it out again, because there's lots and lots of great information, or keep clicking at kjlhradio.com on to the next panel. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
The Radio Free 102.3 KJLH 21st Annual Women's Health Expo, brought to you virtually by the City of Long Beach and Fresno County Black Infant Health Program.